and guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Amp2.tv presents You and Your Doctor, teaching you to live a longer and healthier life. Proudly sponsored by All County Healthcare, where people are the heart of our business. All County Healthcare is a Medicare certified agency where one call will service all your home care health needs. For more information, call 954-717-7027 or visit our website, allcountyhealthcare.com. Now, let's get informed to living a longer and healthier life. Here is your host for today's show.
Welcome back to another episode of You and Your Doctor, sponsored by All County Healthcare. We are a certified home health care agency in Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami-Dade. You can reach us directly at 954-717-7027. And tonight, I am delighted to introduce everybody to Dr. Amadi, and she's right here in Coral Springs. The address is 10189 West Sample Road, Coral Springs, Florida, 33065. Her direct office line is 954-757-0064. And you can also look her up online. Her website is greatnaturaldoctor.com. She is an MD, family medicine, but we are going to discuss so much more. I'm so delighted to have you.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Dr. Amadi, if you wanted to share a little bit about your background and,
Sure.
where did you go to school and training and whatnot?
Okay, well, I'm from New York, and so I went to medical school at State University of New York at Stony Brook on Long Island, and then I did my residency in family practice at Bronx, Lebanon, family practice residency, and then right after that, I moved to lovely, warm Florida.
Yeah.
And I've been here since 1990. And a few years after I finished residency, I went back to school for acupuncture and Chinese herbs.
Oh.
Because I knew that Western medicine, while it might be good at managing illness, was not so good at promoting health or preventing illness. And so I wanted to do things related to that. So that's why I went back to school for acupuncture. So I'm actually an acupuncturist as well, but I never do that because the device that I use, the quantum biofeedback device, does have acupuncture meridian balancing programs in it. So I don't usually stick needles in people anymore, but I can balance their meridians electromagnetically by using the device.
And so, Dr. Amadi, what kind of patients usually end up going to see you?
The kind that want to address the cause of their illness rather than just using medications and or surgeries to suppress the symptoms.
Right.
So they may have to do those things, and I can prescribe medications for them if they need it to help them be stable, but they're not looking to just do that. They're looking to actually heal and get well, and they're actually willing to change their lifestyle if that's what it will take for them to get better. So they're of any age, both genders. They come for a variety of problems and issues, but that's the uniting factor with all of them, is that they want to get well as naturally as possible.
So I have a testimonial, my son's testimonial, if I could share.
Sure, please.
So I think it was about a year and a half ago, my son, one morning, he ended up in the emergency room all night with excruciating pain. His girlfriend had taken him to the emergency room. He couldn't even drive. And so ended up stabilizing, 24 hours later, did feel a little bit better. Went to a specialist who was trying to do more tests, or I don't know what happened, but I said, please go see Dr. Amadi. And I took him to see you, and I guess you put him on your device, and you had all these
You could say leads, or
leads,
electrodes.
yeah, electrodes, and so it was fascinating because you ended up telling him that he had a gluten sensitivity, and he didn't know. We never knew that, and so he had that attack. It was gluten sensitivity. So you prescribed some natural medicine. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. And I just remember when you went to get your dispensary to get them back, you took a couple with you, but then you took one and you were like, put it on there, and then you said, no, not that one, that one. So you want to share with us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
What I was doing when I was doing that was I was testing the frequency of the item, and most people don't think about physical things as having frequencies, but by the nature of quantum physics, everything has frequency or energy.
Right.
You can have energy without matter, but you can't have matter without energy. So what I was doing was putting these things on this plate and then asking the device to compare the frequencies of this item with the frequencies of the person's acupuncture meridians to see if they strengthened them or weakened them or helped to balance them. So as long as they would either strengthen the patient's meridians or help to balance them, then I might suggest that they take this. But if they weakened their meridians, then I would not.
Right.
So this is a great way of being able to know before you suggest something to a patient that they may never have had before. You don't want to give them something that, let's say, they would have an allergic reaction to, and you might not have any way of knowing because they've never had it before. But if you test it on the device, you're pretty sure of how this is going to impact that person, whether it's going to be favorable for them or not good.
Yeah. So just to complete the story, so he took the medication for whatever time it was prescribed for, and he did change his diet. He tweaked some things, and changed his diet. Never had an incident ever again. And so, for me, that's just another, testimonial, another, confirmation that I totally believe in this work.
In fact, since you mentioned that, I have to just tell you this little story, and that is that diet is so powerful in terms of how it affects people's health.
Yes.
But in Western medicine, most of the time, the doctors don't know what the patient's actually doing about diet because in the 7 to 9 minutes that they may spend with the patient, they don't have time to take a detailed diet history, and so therefore they are not going to be able to offer them suggestions that would be better. But I will tell you something that happened to somebody that I know. That person was having certain symptoms. She went to a doctor. They did certain blood tests, and they said that she was having various different autoimmune kinds of problems. Her lab work came up weird in a number of different ways. They weren't sure exactly. Anyway, so she got rid of gluten, sugar, dairy, and a few months later when she came back and had her labs redone, they were all normal.
Wow.
So that just goes to show you how powerful diet is, but most doctors don't even interact with that aspect of the patient.
Right. It's such an amazing story. I mean, what did Hippocrates said? Let your food be your medicine,
and your medicine be your food.
Right. I mean, it's till this day. That's what it is. I also wanted to discuss. It's really big. People are becoming more and more aware of toxins and, maybe mercury in our fillings, and people are becoming more cognizant of that. I wanted to speak to you a little bit about, maybe what we can do to become aware of what is affecting us and how can we help support our body in detoxing.
Well, I would say going to see a good functional medical practitioner might be very helpful, because I'm not saying you should never go to a conventional medicine doctor, because there are times when that might be necessary, but conventional medical doctors do not evaluate patients for the presence of toxins. It's just not something that they do. Although labs exist, for example, that would tell us how much glyphosate is in our bodies, and glyphosate is Roundup.
Yes. Yeah.
So all of the conventionally raised food in this country is chock full of Roundup. And it's very interesting, but just to give you a for instance about how that could impact somebody, just recently I met one of my patients again who I hadn't seen for about 10 years, and she had developed Parkinson's in the interim. And she and her husband have a landscaping business. So she is constantly had been exposed to these, herbicides, and apparently what happens is that when that gets into your gut, it can kill off some of your good gut flora in the same way that it kills off these insects, and by the imbalance in your gut flora, that can actually affect you neurologically. So there's so many things going on now that most of the time doctors don't know why they're happening, but they don't necessarily care about why because they're just going to prescribe a medication.
Yes, yes. I know there's a lot of studies out there now, more and more, of the gut-brain axis and how it really affects us.
The gut, brain, and the immune system.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And the hormones, which are a special area of interest for me, but and neurotransmitters as well. Yes, because that's another thing that you probably will not be finding out a lot about if you go to a conventional medical doctor, because they don't tend to measure hormones.
Right.
And even if the person themselves suspects that maybe they have a hormonal imbalance, and sometimes even if they ask the doctor to run labs to check this, I actually had a patient tell me that when she asked her doctor to do this, the doctor said that he could tell just by looking at her that she had no issues with her hormones, and so therefore he wasn't going to bother to measure them.
Okay.
So, I can just tell you that even slight hormonal imbalances can cause various different problems, like, for example, fatigue,
Yes.
that are often not fully evaluated.
Right.
Oftentimes doctors tend to assume that it's people's stress levels,
Right.
and that's what may have started it. But after a while of chronic stress, that in and of itself can unbalance the glands and hormones. And then once that happens, it will take addressing that imbalance in order to bring the person back to more normal functioning. Even if their stress goes away, they're still unbalanced. So you still have to rebalance them.
So your device is able to assess the levels?
Hormonal balance as well.
Wow.
That's why,
That's fascinating.
I think so. It's one of the things that attracted me to using this device was that it gives you so much information about how the person is functioning in so many different areas, way more than just your normal labs. People think that when they show up for an annual physical that the doctor is going to take their blood and test for everything that
Right.
could possibly be tested for in order to know if they're doing okay or not. But there's only certain tests that they routinely do. And, you could be having major functional problems and have your lab tests be perfectly normal. And a lot of times the patients that I see have that. They come to see me because they have something going on with them that they're perturbed about. They know that it's not normal for them.
Right.
And so they tell their doctors this, and a lot of times their doctors will just measure the usual
Sure.
routine labs, and if those things come back within normal limits, then they
Right.
tend to assume that it can't be anything too serious.
Right. Makes sense.
And sometimes they even think that the patient is malingering or, just wanting attention. So
yeah.
that happens too.
What about, I know that I hear that, actually there's a commercial break. We'll be right back. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
We'll be right back. We have a quick commercial break, everybody. Stay tuned.
All County Healthcare has exciting news for any and all patients with COPD or other respiratory ailments. Listen to what renowned pulmonologist Dr. Keith Robinson has to say.
Hello, I'm Dr. Keith Robinson, board-certified pulmonologist, medical director at Fusion Health Pulmonary Rehabilitation, and a board member with the American Lung Association of South Florida. We have exciting news for patients with COPD. We now offer IPV therapy at home, which has been demonstrated to improve airway clearance, decrease hospitalization, and improve quality of life of patients with COPD. Please call All County Healthcare for more information about this FDA-approved therapy.
For further information, call All County Healthcare now at 954-717-7027. That is 954-717-7027, or visit our website at allcountyhealthcare.com. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Remember, All County Healthcare always puts the patient's needs first. You are listening to You and Your Doctor, Living Longer and Healthier, an informative show that helps you find answers to questions you always wanted to ask, but did not have that somebody that could make a difference in your life. Call into the show if you have a question at 888-565-1470, and we will put you on the air to inform all our listeners. Now, back to our show.
Thank you for tuning back in to You and Your Doctor. We are having a delightful conversation with Dr. Amadi, and I'm going to give you her address. It's 10189 West Sample Road, Coral Springs, Florida 33065. You can reach out to her at the office. The number is 954-757-0064, and you can check out her website, greatnaturaldoctor.com.
I'll just mention that doctor is spelled out.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Great Natural Doctor, DOCTOR.com. Thank you for that clarification.
Oh, sure.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
So, Dr. Amadi, I'm loving this device that you're talking about, because I was going to ask you, so many of us are deficient in minerals, or they discovered that, like during COVID, people were realizing, wow, I'm so low in vitamin D3, that helps our immune system, right? Does your device, is it able to detect?
Yes, it's able to detect deficiencies in vitamins, in minerals, in enzymes. So people think that if they go and they get routine labs done, that will show if they have any nutritional deficiencies, but not necessarily, and sometimes the nutritional deficiencies would have to be pretty severe for it to make changes in the way the patient's labs come back. And then again, too, it also depends on if the doctor who ordered the labs ordered certain tests done. So, for example, they didn't always used to order excuse me, vitamin D or B12 or folic acid. And so if they didn't order it, then they don't get any information back about that. And again, too, it also depends on their interpretation. So for example, it could be that the person has nominally good levels of vitamin D because it's in the normal range, but it could be at the low end of normal, which might not really be ideal for them. So
yeah, and we're all so unique, right?
Yes.
Everybody's unique.
That's
so
right.
My optimum level that I feel good, it could be different than the next person, right?
True. And for example, a lot of darker skinned people might need more vitamin D than a lot of lighter skinned people.
Yes.
And you would think that living in Florida, we would all get plenty, but not necessarily.
Right. This is true. This is true. Very interesting. So what, there's so much to discuss. What's your favorite thing to do when a patient comes in? Like what is something that, because I know you're passionate about what you do.
It may show.
It does show.
Well, one thing that I do is I write down for them at the end of the session an assessment and plan.
Okay.
Because I've been accused of bombarding people with so much information that sometimes they feel overwhelmed and they just don't know where to start in
Yeah.
terms of, you know, addressing their issues. So I found that it's helpful to them
Yes.
to make a list of all the different things that are going on with them so that it's easy for them to remember what I think their issues are, and then a plan for how to start addressing them, because certain things may have higher priority than others.
True.
And you know, there may be 5 different things that a
Right.
person needs to do, but it's important to know which are the most important things, which things are easiest to start on first. And so that's why I like to do that, because then when they look back at their visit, they can
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. I had a question. I hear doctors talking a lot lately, functional medical doctors talking about this MTHR. Are we methylating? What does that mean? And can you please share with us a little
Sure.
bit more about that?
Well, there's such a thing called a methyl group, which is composed of carbon and then 3 atoms of hydrogen. And so the body needs to be able to attach certain chemical groups to other chemicals so that those chemicals can take part in the metabolism of the body. And there are certain people who genetically have greater difficulty in what they call methylating or
Right.
attaching these groups to certain chemicals. So to give you a relevant example of where this might be important, so vitamin B12 is the most commonly available form of it is called cyanocobalamin. This is a good form for most people, but for people who have that MTHFR variation, cyanocobalamin will not be well absorbed. So they have to take it in the form of methylcobalamin.
I see.
So if they know that about themselves, and if they know that they need a B12 supplement, then they can be looking for one that contains methylcobalamin instead of cyanocobalamin. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you an interesting story
Please.
about that.
Yes, please do.
I once had a patient call me up because her other doctor had told her that her level of B12 was too high and asked her if she was taking B12 supplements, which she was, and her doctor advised her to stop taking them because her level in the blood was too high. So I told her that there's a different way of measuring it than the standard lab way. This goes by a different kind of technology where instead of just measuring the levels in the plasma, they extract the white blood cells from the patient's blood sample, grow them on a petri dish, bombard them with oxidative stress, and then conclude by the basis of how the cells stand up to that, how much of certain nutrients they must have absorbed. So when she did that test, everything came back normal, except that her B12 levels were low.
Oh,
So it gave exactly the opposite results, and the reason why that happened is because her white blood cells were not being able to absorb the B12, and so because the B12 she was taking was cyanocobalamin, and she turns out she was one of those who had the variant. So she actually said that she felt better when she was taking the B12 supplement, and that's why she called me, because she thought it was strange that the doctor should say that she should stop taking it because her level was too high. Functionally, really, her level was too low.
wow. That's amazing how you're just those little detections and tweaking that and, you know, learning everything through what you're offering. You know, you're helping so many people feel better.
I try.
Oh, you're doing that for sure.
I try.
So you mentioned a patient, Parkinson's. Do people get some relief from maybe the symptoms or?
Well, first of all, even for that person to know what was her risk factor in developing that, I mean, that could at least help her to try to minimize her exposure to these things
Yes.
going forward.
Yeah.
So if she didn't know that, then she wouldn't be able to do that.
True.
And then there's other things, for example, that could be helpful to her that she may not have been aware of. So for example, here's an interesting thing. I think it's interesting. One thing that differentiates, let's say, organic vegetables or fruits from grains that are sold as organic, that are allowed to be marketed as organic, is that the veggies and the fruits will not have been cultivated with any herbicides or pesticides.
Okay.
However, the grains, even those that are allowed to be sold as organic, they are allowed to be sprayed with fungicides
Oh.
while they are in the grain silos waiting to be shipped off to
Interesting.
wherever.
Interesting fact to know.
Right.
I can't believe we have like 1 minute left, Dr. Amadi.
Okay,
This is going
well.
so fast.
Time flies when you're having
it
fun.
really is.
So all I'm saying
Yeah,
by
let's
that
wrap
is
it
that
up.
when you eat grains,
Yeah.
you're also getting fungicides. Now, most people are not going to stop eating grains, even if they're organic grains, but it's
Sure.
just something to know. And in certain people's cases who have neurological issues, that could be important.
Yes, good to know. All these little bits of information can help us lead a healthier life. So, and that's what we want to do. We want to minimize, all these risks by being knowledgeable, being aware, and taking action. And I know that you're helping raise awareness for patients. So, thank you.
Trying
for
to do that.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you
doing
for
that.
having me on your show. I really
Absolutely,
appreciate that.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure. Thank you. I'll have
Same
to have you
here.
again so we can continue this conversation.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great evening. We'll see you next week. Take care.